Good morning, class. I'm speaking to you from our classroom that's empty, but I'm pretending you're here. Dr. Anthony Stephen Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. You'd know him better as Dr. Fauci, Tony. He is the face of the United States COVID-19 pandemic on national television. He's a career immunologist who has handled everything from AIDS to Ebola to H1N1 to this wretched COVID-19. They don't know if he's a Democrat or a Republican because he doesn't say. And he's worked under 5 presidents. He's called America's doctor. He's age 79. He's the son of an Italian immigrant. He grew up in New York, married, 3 daughters, all successful. And like me, one of his degrees is from a senior Jesuit university. 2 years ago, he was the commencement speaker at the graduation of the doctors from Ohio State University. And he told them 5 things. And these 5 things they're going to take with them in their lifetime. Now remember, when a doctor graduates, he has a little suitcase, black, and in it he has things like his stethoscope, he has emergency medications, he has sutures, and so on. What Dr. Fauci told these graduating doctors was this: in your lifetime, you've got to pretend that you have a toolkit. And that survival kit is going to last you all the days of your life. And here are the 5 things in your survival kit. 1, be a perpetual student. 2, expect the unexpected. 3, embrace public service. 4, lead by example. 5, pursue happiness. I'm going to use those 5 ideas and present them to us as members of this class. And we're fighting for survival. What Dr. Fauci was saying to these doctors, setting out in their career in medicine, you need 5 road signs too when we're in the midst of this pandemic. And we're going to look at the upside and the inside for who knows for how long this is going to be. We're all starting out again, and we really all need a survival kit. So today I'm going to help you find it. I'm going to give you a road sign, which is really a survival kit that was given by one of the great prophets of the Old Testament. And here's what he said. It's not in 5 ideas, it's in 1. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. His compassions, and another word for that is instructions. His instructions never fail, and they're new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. I'm talking about Jeremiah, and I'm talking about the 3rd chapter of the book of Lamentations. Here's a little background to that text. The writer, as I said, was God's prophet Jeremiah. The nation Judah had just been conquered by the invading Babylonians. There was a new pandemic. They were conquered. They now rule this wonderful nation of the Babylonians, all the way from Ethiopia through Egypt, through Israel, all the way down to India. And the city of Jerusalem has fallen. The shops are empty, the schools are closed, the temple's been destroyed, everyone is out of work. Does that sound familiar? Jeremiah's lament, how the deserted cities lie. All the splendor has departed, and the young and the old lay together in the dust. Then comes these wonderful words. It's in the toolkit that God gives through the lips of Jeremiah to the people of Judah. He says to them this wonderful promise: because of the Lord, his love is for them, and his understanding for them never fails. They're new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Dr. Fauci, speaking to these medical students, he shared the passion that he had for 40 years as a doctor. Now, with all of us in isolation, we're practicing social distancing, wearing masks, washing our hands diligently, not touching our faces. There's something that we can do. And I'm going to give you these 5 ideas that Dr. Fauci shared, and maybe we can put them together for us too in these troubled times. Number 1, be a perpetual student. Now, being a student is a passion that often we don't think about. In this downtime, are you being a student? I am. I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm investigating, I'm learning new things, I'm trying new ideas, I'm figuring things out, new devices, I'm looking at the iPad, I still don't know how it works all the time. I'm trying to do things that are different. I got a call the other day from a neighbor. He's a friend of mine, and he's an engineer. And what he's been doing, he takes his camera, it's only got a 60% lens, that is, a lens that gives magnification down 60 times. And here's what he did. He put together this little picture of a bird that he had taken early in the morning when he goes for a walk. It's a thrush. When you see it out in the distance, it really doesn't look like very much. But when you look at it up close, aren't those colors absolutely magnificent? Well, that's what my friend Jim found when he took his camera early one morning and he went out about it and did his work. Well, let me show you something that I've been doing. I've wanted to do this for a long time. One day when Mary and I were walking the shores of England, there's a little flower that grows along the beach. It's in the grass, in the weeds, and it's the prettiest thing you've ever seen. It's called a thrift. And this little thrift is just a little pink flower, and it has a white top on it. And it's a gorgeous thing. Well, I've always wanted to paint it. Now, I'm not an oil painter, but I love to work with oil paint. And the reason I like to use oil is because it's just like colored peanut butter. And if you go and you spread it deeply onto the palette, it's like peanut butter sandwich on your toast. Well, I put it together and I gave it a try. And one night when I was after work, I went downstairs on my easel and I took my, not paintbrush, I took a palette knife. And this is what a palette knife looks like. They come in all sizes. They come pointed. They come square topped. This is my little pointed one. Well, I took that paint and I worked away, and here's what I found. I'm going to show you my rendition. I found a piece of slate along the beach over in England, and here is my rendition. This is what a thrift looks like, I think, if you put it together with a palette knife, and it shows up in that beautiful little flower along the seashore in England. And that's something you could try. Now, I don't know how you're spending your time, and we're all students, but maybe it's time to change the pictures on the wall and you want to put some new ones up with the grandchildren. Or maybe you want to go and do for another walk. Or maybe you want to start learning knitting or crocheting, whatever it is. You've put that together, and that's how it worked. And I'm really amazed at the little things that people have been phoning me and telling me they're doing. And I'm really happy about that. Okay, the first thing we do is become a perpetual student. The next thing Dr. Fauci said, expect the unexpected. Now, he's talking to would-be physicians. They're going to have patients that are going to come into their client or into their room, and they're going to have dog bites, they're going to have poisonings, they're going to have maybe their arm severed off in the corn picker. What unexpected encounters has that virus given to you? Every one of us face it differently. I'm going to read you something that I really found cute. Kristen Clark Taylor. She was an African-American journalist living in Washington. And when this pandemic broke out, her mind went back to her childhood, and this is what she wrote about her mother. Long before the coronavirus, my mother quarantined me when I was 7 years of age, and she wanted me to contain the contagion. She keeps using that expression. I went into a mother's mandated self-isolation quarantine when I was 7 years of age. I still remember suffering from that nasty cough and the way too high fever that made me feel limp, washed out, and yearning desperately for a very large scoop of chocolate ice cream to break the fever, as I explained to my mom. I can remember the doctor peering into my mouth and describing it as an angry little threat that's as red as a berry. So Mother decided to shut everything down. And with 6 other children, a husband, and 2 cats under the same roof, she did what she had to do. She'd done it before, she'd do it again. And she did it without apology or wasted words. Contain the contagion, she said. Simple as that. It was not just a common sense courtesy, but a non-negotiable, rock-solid mandate of communal living. Even as a child, though, I remember being distinctly aware that I'd been so quickly isolated because I was deeply, deeply loved. My exile was about as excellent as any exile could be, and what made it so was Mom, my mother. I knew her goal wasn't to banish me as much as it was to get me better. Her patterns were precise, they were methodical, but oh so very, very loving. She kept a metal pail filled with bleach just inside my bedroom door. And when she would come in, she'd take off her yellow gloves because she wore those all the time when she was cleaning. And as she took it off, she took my temperature, and it almost felt grateful to be sick. So comforting was the feel of her cool hand against my fevered little forehead. I realize today, as we stand toe-to-toe with this new coronavirus and face a world that has been forever altered, the mother's no-nonsense pattern protected not just me, but every single person in our household, and these patterns repeated themselves in my own life as I moved into adulthood. Decades later, working as a communications strategist in the White House in Washington, I remember coming down with a nasty bug. The moment I found out I could be contagious, I went home immediately, not just because I was pregnant and didn't want to put my unborn baby at risk, but because I had no intention of exposing my White House colleagues and possibly even the President of the United States from my germs. Nothing doing. It was a matter of civility, respect, and communal responsibility. Contain the contagion. So my mother's practical wisdom lives on in more ways than one. The daughter whom I was pregnant with is now in the White House. Eventually, she became a staffer, just like me. So the wisdom has become multi-generational. And my words to you, respect the lives of others. So expect the unexpected. It's going to be there, but I think there's a place and there is a way that we can contain it. There's a third thing that Dr. Fauci said. He said, embrace public service. Dr. Fauci is a leading voice. He's an authority for this world's pandemic. And he's treating it as a public service. He's come out of his office, he's come away from his laboratory, he's come away from his thinking and his practical knowledge of preparation for a disease, and he's gone public as a servant. You don't know the name Edward Edwumi. That's a name that really doesn't mean anything to us, but he lives in New York, and with his wife and 2 boys, they live in the poor section of the Bronx. He makes a minimum wage, but he's become a bit of a celebrity. He's become a bit of a public figure, and he didn't plan on that. Let me back up a bit. He comes from Nigeria. He has 2 boys and a wife. And when he was over there in Nigeria, he had a lovely little printing firm in his small town, and he published all kinds of things, but he was a Christian man. One day there's a knock came to his door, and the knock was from Boko Haram. They were the Muslim terrorist group, and they were horrible because they had murdered men, women, and children by the scores. Tani was the young boy, his youngest child, and one night he heard a knock on the door, and he heard his father go to the door. And when he went to the door, he opened it, and here was one of the leading generals for Boko Haram. And the general said to him, he said, I want you to do a flash drive immediately tomorrow, and I want 25,000 copies written in Arabic, and here's what I want it said: kill all Christians and death to Western education. That printing order drove Tani, the little boy, and his brother Austin, and his mom and dad out of their home that night, and they fled for their life. They left the country of Nigeria, they made their way to the United States, and they ended up in New York. Here's where the story takes a very different twist. When the little boy Tani went to school in New York, he found that there was something that really caught his eye. Do you know what it was? The game of chess. His brother brought home a chess game with the parts, and in reading it in the book, he taught him how to play chess. Well, what did they find out? This little Tanny, now just 10 and 12 years old, he became a chess champion. He won and became the grand champion of the state of New York at the age of 12. And they used to ask the father, where did he get this wisdom? Did you teach him? No. Did his mother teach him? No. Where did he learn all of this? Well, somehow it was a God-given gift. And because Tanny's dad, Edward, was a Christian, he said this, in all these little things, coming out of Nigeria and finding our way to a new country, I don't know what makes sense, but I do know that God makes a way. Isn't that nice? God makes a way. This man embraced public service because he went before the cameras and he explained the success of his young son. And all he could say was, it's a gift from God. No one gave it to him. And who knows how far he's going to go. He probably will become the grand champion of the earth. Embrace public service. Well, the fourth thing that Mr. Fauci addresses here, not only do you have a great example in medicine and immunology in this man, but he has a wonderful gift of expressing example. He leads by example. And you remember what I read to you in the book of Lamentation? Because of the Lord's great love, his compassion, his understanding for us never fails. Verse 22 of chapter 3 of Lamentations. During this lockup in this pandemic, I've learned some wonderful things about my life, but I'm learning some things also about my wife. Her mother was a single mom. Mary grew up in a family of 4. They lived in New Brunswick. They were poor as church mice. Her father ran off, and they were left with nothing. Her mother had to put things together the best she could, working late at night, scrubbing floors. They used to walk as a family up and down the Bay of Fundy gathering clams, and they would put together clam chowder for months ahead and freeze it. Anyway, one of the things that her mother taught Mary was that you have cleanliness. And I think she practiced deep clean long before I ever heard the word. And in their little cabinets away out there in New Brunswick, her mother once a year used to take the cabinets and pull them apart, and she would scrub them, take everything out, scrub everything, and put them all back again. Little did I know, I've been so busy in my lifetime that in 56 years of marriage, I didn't know that Mary did this every year. Well, in the midst of this pandemic, I found her doing it. Everything out of every cabinet, all the way from the floor to the ceiling. And I'm talking pots, pans, dishes, glassware, cutlery, even the spices. And she'd take them all out, and then she'd scrub it all down. And that wasn't enough. She had to put on every shelf paper. We had enough shelf paper in our kitchen, in the rolls, to go around the block. She would cut it up and put it on every shelf. And after she finished that, I watched her go into the fridge, and she did the same with the refrigerator, both the bottom part of the fridge and also the freezing part of the fridge. Everything came out and everything went back in again. And I was really amazed. As a matter of fact, in the freezer, we found 2 steaks. And we don't usually buy steaks because they're quite expensive. We usually eat fish, chicken, but we found these 2 steaks, and I cooked them up that night. Brentview, they were so hard. As a matter of fact, I had to run out to the garage and get a file and file these teeth just to get through it. But you know, the next night, do you know what I did? I tore the soles off of 2 of my shoes, and I fried those up, and with a little bit of ketchup, they weren't any more tough than what I ate the night before. Lead by example. I am so proud of Mary that she could lead by example, and you know, I think we've got the cleanest cabinets in our whole block. That's what I think the old prophet was saying here out of the voice of Jeremiah. He was saying, because of the Lord's great love for you, we're not consumed. In other words, we're not going to be overwhelmed by this virus. His understandings for us never fail, and they're brand new every morning. What a great thought. Well, finally, the last thing that Dr. Fauci teaches me is pursue happiness. Now, that's a strange one because I sometimes find it very hard in the midst of all this to be happy. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he made this statement. The worst emptiness in this world is not the gulag in Siberia, but it's living in a world of emptiness without God. God makes happiness, and it's new every morning. And you know, when you get down on this pandemic, try this. The Lord's compassions never fail. They're best of all, they're brand new, and great is his faithfulness. Now, just before the pandemic came in, I took our vacuum cleaner and I was vacuuming for Mary in the house. And when we moved from our little place on the island out on the coast, out there we always had a central vacuum system. But it only had one hose. But there were 3 floors. So if you went from the main floor up to the bedroom and then from the main floor down to the basement, you had to carry this hose. And it was long, it was 35 feet long. And the only way I could describe it for you is like going up the hill with a hockey stick between your legs. Well, I said to Mary, maybe we can do better than that. Because when I had used it the last time, and we bought a cordless. When we came to Calgary, I bought a cordless vacuum cleaner. It's a brand name, but I must tell you, I don't think it works very well. Anytime I used it, it would run out of gas within the first 8 or 10 minutes. It could hardly do the vacuuming of one couch. And it wouldn't certainly after that pick up even a cobweb. And the last time I used it, I was in our bedroom. Now, in our Sunday school class, some of you come with German background. Well, you know these 2 words. One is an Ausgraber and the other is a Hubschrauber. Do you know what they are? Well, an Ausgraber, that's a vacuum cleaner. A Hubschrauber is a helicopter. Well, I took that cordless Ausgraber and I swung it over the bed like a Hubschrauber, and if there had been a hole in the ceiling, that thing would have been in the neighbor's yard. Well, I told that to Mary and I said, can I do better? Why don't you let me go and buy you another central vac? And I'll put it in, but this time I'll not have 1 hose, I'll buy you 3 hoses. And I did. Did you know that in Calgary, there's a place that sells brand new and old vacuum cleaners? And they're all on the wall when you go inside, and they're run by a lovely family. I think they're from the Middle East. They can speak good English. And when I went in, I said to him, is there any chance that you would have maybe a used central vacuum system with a motor? Yes, he said. Well, he took me into another part and he showed me this vacuum cleaner, and it was nice and high, good and tall. And it was called a Beam, B-E-A-M. You remember that back in Sunday school. Remember we used to sing, Jesus Wants Me for a Sunbeam? That one. My kids could never sing it very well. They used to run around the house singing, Jesus Wants Me for a Sunburn. Anyway, I came home with that. But here's what that proprietor did. When you buy from him, not only do you get a really good deal on a used part, and it's all been guaranteed and it's under warranty, but he gives you 3 hoses. They're all used. And he gives me all the pipes. He gives me all the paraphernalia that I can use to put together. I'm talking about elbows. I'm talking about unions. I'm talking about the wiring. Everything. It all comes together. And whatever's left over, he gives you more than you need. And when you're done, take it back. Well, along comes a pandemic. And I had all these things downstairs and I installed them. I put them in the ceiling and I hooked it up. The house we're in, it has roughed in vacuum flow. So I put it all together and I started it out. Now, I started it out in our bedroom. That may have been a mistake. Because when I turned it on, talk about work. This thing, Brentview, really sucks. As a matter of fact, it did such a good job. Mary didn't talk to me for 3 hours. I don't blame her. Because when I turned it on, she lost one of her curtains and 2 of her unmentionables. If there had been a hole in one of the walls or in the ceiling or even in maybe the window open and I stuck that hose out, I think the neighbor would have lost one of their cats. I went back and told Mary and she was so excited. Well, that's what I did during this pandemic. Now, Dr. Fauci said 5 things. I'll repeat them. Be a perpetual student. Expect the unexpected. Embrace public service. Lead by example. Pursue happiness. But best of all, do you remember what I taught you in the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verse 22? Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. His compassions, his understanding for us, they never fail. As a matter of fact, they're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Frida, if you're watching me, Frida's our pianist, that thing right behind me. And at the end of the class, if you were here, I would have you take our hymn book, and we would turn, I think it's 98, and I would conclude my Sunday school class here with this hymn. Let me read it to you. Great is thy faithfulness, O God our Father. There is no shadow from turning from thee. Thou changest not. Thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness. I can hear you playing it, Frida, and I can hear my class singing it. Until next time, I'll look forward to seeing you coming back. May the Lord bless you in the midst of this nasty virus. Amen.